In
Where
Harlem.
are we?
We're in Harlem, baby. Harlem World.
Okay. Can
Do
you
you-
tell us about this park? And why you chose
Yeah. So this is Marcus Garvey Park, my neighborhood park, formerly Mount Morris Park. It is the center of West Harlem, Central Harlem. This is where we have so many community events, arts, cultures, wellness stuff. We have the amphitheater. We'll do live music and performances. If you guys have heard of Soundstage, or we'll do, stoop parties out here around this park. And there's a lot of beautiful neighbors who just come out and enjoy community and, physical activity and barbecues. And it's where me and my dog love to take little hikes, It's just a great place.
Tell us about the new majority.
Yeah, so the New Majority is an incredible organization. We are both a 501c3 and a C4 political org. It is formerly known as 21 to 21 Initiative, so many people may have heard about that. Big movement back in 2017 to try to get at least 21 women into city council by 2021, because historically there have been no more than 11 or 12 women in the council out of 51 seats. And it was really a great opportunity, since there were so many open seats in New York City Council, to try to get closer to gender parity. And in 2021, we did not just meet our goal, we exceeded it. And we have now 31 women in the City Council. And so the 21 to 21 initiative was transformed into the New Majority, because we are the first time Women Majority Council.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. What does your day-to-day look like as the executive director of the new majority?
Yeah, so my day-to-day looks like, depending on what time of year it is, right? We're in the heart of campaign season, so my day-to-day is connected with candidates, planning events for them, whether it's canvassing or phone banking, or planning fundraisers with them, and additionally working really closely with our board to, really define our strategy and our communications for, all the issues going on in New York City right now. And then it's working with partners and figuring out cool events that we're going to do together that amplify our collective and collaborative missions and goals, and trying to do more research and opinion, thought leadership, and just trying to work through what the organization is looking like, not just during the campaign season but after, right? And for me, that looks like, how do we cultivate the next generation, continue to cultivate the next generation, including young people, and making sure that we position women not just to be in elected office, but to be running campaigns and helping become staffers, and eventually becoming the leaders that we want to see. And I think now that we have such an incredible majority, who are now veterans in the council, we are looking forward to seeing them take on new levels of leadership, whether it's mayor or comptroller or borough president or whatever it is. So this is really that year for us to build.
How many candidates is the new majority backing this election?
Yeah, we are backing over 40 women in the council races specifically, both women who have already been in office who are running for re-election, and new candidates who are running either to challenge existing candidates or in open seats where there are just amazing slate of opportunity to fill those seats. So, and we're in the process of expanding our endorsement process, both borough-wide and citywide. So we expect to endorse about 50 candidates this cycle.
Amazing. What would you say is the number one challenge for the women who are running for elected office?
And the number one challenge, particularly, I like to really, caveat this with also the fact that this is the most diverse city council in New York City history. And with that, there are not just women, there are women of color who are in this council. And the biggest challenge they face is getting not just name recognition support, but getting fundraising support, infrastructurally and network-wise. It's just a lot harder for our communities to receive the level of support that they're seeking, whether it's for council or for higher office. And so we're always doing our best to try to support their fundraising strategies. And so that's probably the biggest hurdle. And also, as women, we are leaders of our communities, leaders of our homes. Having family and thinking about childcare and expenses associated with that, there are soft costs, there are costs that are hidden that women have to face specifically. And so when you think about, when I go back to fundraising, I think that's the biggest struggle, is for women having to think about, how they're going to care for all the things they do and financially support that while they're running for office. And many can't keep their jobs, right? If they're working a day job, especially in government, they can't keep their day-to-day job. And so thinking about how they can sustain their families and their communities while they're running is probably the biggest hurdle. Yeah.
What would you say are the top 5 policy issues affecting women?
Yeah, so, healthcare, right? So that's reproductive healthcare, reproductive rights, access to resources for reproductive rights, whether that's birth control or, other forms of bodily autonomy care, maternity welfare. That is really one of the biggest landmark pieces of legislation, packages of legislation that our Majority Women Council have passed, is ensuring there are resources and protections, both economically and from a health perspective, for birthing people, and that they have training and resources and dollars to make sure they're successful in their research, and that there's also research and money set aside to research the impact of maternity health, particularly for Black women and women of color. That's 2 pieces. Pay equity, economic equity, making sure there's transparency. I mean, this council was able to pass legislation that made it required that any job that post their salary. That's a huge deal. Not just for women and for people of color, but for all New Yorkers who are seeking to work. It's important that they know and there's transparency from the jump. But then also thinking about paid equity from the sense of making sure people are getting paid what they're worth, and that, making sure there's research that backs what we know, which is that women of color make less than women, that women make less than men, and all of that, how that connects and where they can fill in gaps systematically. Criminal justice reform, immigrant rights. These are all part of what our women majority are prioritizing, as well as, climate action, climate justice, making sure our parks are protected, making sure they have their resources, and making sure we're thinking about how to, provide solar power, and thinking about energy efficiency and effectiveness systematically. I think those are some of the big priorities they've been able to pass.
What's been the greatest impact of having this majority women of color seats in the city council over the past cycle?
Yeah, from a legislative perspective, there's a lot, right? When it comes to criminal justice reform, fighting to hold police accountable for how, certain actions are taken, particularly against communities of color, fighting for our social services in the midst of really major cuts that were being proposed, and making sure that our schools, our community centers, our health centers, our senior centers have their resources, and that there's dollars for the services that they need. But I think the impact, especially just from a symbolic perspective, is it changes the game for how we see leadership. The politics is a man's game, is a boys' club. That narrative is changing. And I can attest personally from just previous experience doing this work that once you see a few women in leadership, it changes how everything looks and feels. And it makes it normal, right? And that's the goal, is that we normalize women in major leadership positions. We normalize women becoming mayor. New York City has still not elected a mayor who is a woman, which is wild for the most, quote, progressive city in the country. And so, that is what we're seeking to do. And so having a majority council in 2025 that in 2029 is eligible to run for the highest office is our goal, right? And so that impact is really kind of beyond words.
What's your top advice for women interested in getting into politics?
Do it. Do it. We need you. The top advice I would provide in terms of how to get in is just to go to your elected official's office and see how you can support. Look into your community board, go to their meetings. They have meetings every month. I think it's Wednesdays. It depends on which community board you're on or you're in. Just hang out and go to the meetings, or look on their website and see the recordings of the meetings and see what's going on, and get involved. I think that's the easiest way to do it. And because the community of folks who are advocates and care about the communities are so tight and so supportive, you'll find your way to how to navigate your right space for that. If you're looking to run for office, remember, New York City is all about authenticity, right? We want people who have been doing the work. And that is why I think so many women are successful in politics now, is because they have been doing the work, and now we're able to amplify it. So do the work and get connected with people who care about the work, and you know, and join organizations like the New Majority, who are here to help you build your capacity and build your knowledge and build your network and build your resources. So yeah, first do it. Don't doubt it. And we know the statistics. It takes about 7 times for a woman to be asked to run for office before she says yes. And it takes men less than 1. And so it's really important that you know that people are seeking you and want you, and that when they call for you, take it. And this is me preaching to myself as well. Women do the work. We kind of like to just do the work. And, you know, being in leadership positions are not just about ego or about influence and power, though that can be interpreted as such. It's about making the most of your impact. And so that's the number one thing, is just do it.
Have you ever backed any unsuccessful candidates?
Yes. This is my first year running the organization, but I was on the Young Leadership Council previously and was involved in the 21 in the past. Yes, the organization has backed candidates who did not win. The beauty of New York City politics now is that we have ranked choice voting, and the New Majority does rank our candidates. And so we are going to see an increase of people who don't win, because everyone can't win if they're ranked. But we have, yes, so the simple answer is yes.
What support do you give those women career-wise?
So especially when we're not doing campaign activities, we're doing workshops all the time around issue-specific topics, or around how the political system works. We have Council 101s and Council 201s and different series where we educate people on the political process, the legislative process, but then we partner with folks like, tech organizations and, environmental organizations, or organizations focused on women and people of color. And we do workshops to educate people about specific relevant issues so that they can always be aware. And then we have a membership base. So if you become a member of the New Majority, you're always welcome to get engaged in any of our activities, whether it's an event or going out on the campaign trails to learn more and get kind of the experience of being out there, which I think is really valuable.
How do you guide candidates who are also moms with work-life balance?
Yeah.
Because politics can be a 24-hour game.
Yeah, one of the organizations out here really doing that work really well is Vote Mama. They are specifically dedicated to helping working moms become elected officials, and we do a lot of learning for what they do. And for us, one of the things that we've been trying to advocate for is making sure that they have the resources for childcare, and legislation around universal pre-K and things like that, universal childcare, which our council is heavily backing, and hopefully a mayor will fully fund, are the pieces of legislation that matter to us for ensuring that those barriers to entry are eliminated. And when it comes to actually being on the trail itself, we're always trying to find ways to be accommodating and supportive in that way. We're still figuring out how to best go about that from a financial perspective. For us, we've thought about, should we create a PAC so we have money set aside specifically for those type of resources for our working moms who are candidates. But in the meantime, just really pushing the legislation that's active around ensuring that all New Yorkers have access to affordable childcare is going to completely, reduce that barrier for candidates that are seeking to run.
How can New York City elected officials fight the potential disenfranchisement of the SAVE Act?
Yeah, the first things first is fighting to ensure that Senate does not pass it, right? It passed the House of Representatives. It has not passed in the Senate. And so we have to fight and call our congresspeople, not just our particular congresspeople, our senators, but any senator that we're concerned about opposing this or supporting this piece of legislation, so that it's not even an issue. But with that in mind, we know what's happening in our political system, and we can't bet on that. And so from a local level, I think it's really important that we push our elected officials to try to create reforms for our Board of Elections process to ensure that, we can mitigate this issue. With that being said, it's really important that if it does pass in the Senate and it's official law, that we really fight like heck to ensure that our state and local electeds advocate for Board of Election reforms that mitigate this potential piece of legislation. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really know exactly how that's going to work. States and local entities have the power to determine how to run their own elections, at least currently. And so, there are all kinds of laws all across the country where you have to have your ID, you have to don't have your ID. It just depends on the local entity. And so really just figure out how we on the local level and the state level can mitigate this and, make sure it's actually not a requirement. That's the key. And if that is still the case, like, what can we do to ensure that we provide as much information as possible so that people get what they need so that they can vote?